Hey guys, it's Nicole Eaton with the Rock Your Soul book and podcast, where we talk about how to hack your mindset, grow your intuition, and live your best life. You can support this podcast by subscribing, leaving a positive review, and screenshot and sharing on social media. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm excited to be here. I like this idea of rocking your soul. I'm a rocker myself, lifelong drummer, and
Awesome. So for my people who don't know you, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do?
Hi, my name's Dan Sykes. I am the founder of Somatic Training Network. We have a new online platform called SomaticLab.live, which features live and on-demand training of nervous system training of all disciplines. We welcome top instructors in everything from ancient arts like yoga and qigong and tai chi and many others, all the way through modern neuroscience-based nervous system training disciplines like Feldenkrais method, Hanna somatics, and a lot of little what would you say, seemingly obscure disciplines that not too many people have heard about, but really make tremendous impact on people's lives in recovery, in wellness, in reducing anxiety, and all the great things that training your nervous system does for people.
That's so, I love this because I think that a lot of people underestimate. I actually was just talking in one of my recent podcasts about how powerful the body stores memory and energy. Can you explain a little bit about what the somatic arts are? Like, what does that even mean?
Well, the way I use the word somatics is to represent any training discipline which increases nervous system function. And the way nervous system function increases is by developing your ability to physically feel. We don't talk about it in those terms too often. When people are going to their yoga class, they think of it in terms of stretching and in terms of slowing down your thinking and focus and awareness. But what awareness really ultimately is the ability to feel physically more and more and more. Beginning students, they're trying to learn to feel a particular area of their body in more and more detail. I liken it to sort of like a microscope approach to physical sensation. And then over time, in whatever discipline you're in, you learn to expand that very detailed sense of physical feeling to more and more locations of your body, and in a dynamic way where you can feel the interconnectedness of the flesh and the work going on, and reducing effort by moving that work more and more efficiently. Many people are involved in ancient disciplines that don't use the word nervous system because they didn't perceive the nervous system the way we now know it to function. So the words the ancient disciplines use may be different. But what we now know through science is that all of these disciplines are in fact training the nervous system by using two things simultaneously: very slow motion movement and taking turns in moving your attention around to physically feeling different parts of your body while you're doing that movement. And the movement, the fact that you're moving allows you to feel your flesh more than when you're still. So using movement as a means to feel more, and over time developing this ability to physically feel, is actually what all of these disciplines, both ancient and modern alike, are based on. This natural capacity we have to overwrite our movement habit and recalibrate our nervous system, shall we say, by combining slow motion movement and focused attention.
This is fascinating to me because I've done yoga on and off, but there are definitely times where I feel like I can't slow my body down, or I feel like caught up in the energy where it's harder to slow my body down. So just thinking about how that slow movement and the intentional energy of just focusing on different parts of the body can actually regulate your nervous system is interesting. How does someone even get into somatic arts? Like, tell me your story.
My story is I came to it through emotional pain. You know, most people are coming to this kind of work through some type of pain. Many people are in accidents or sports injuries, something like that, and need to slow down. It forces them to slow down, and they come into this kind of work that way. I, at about 45 years old, went into a full-blown sort of midlife crisis mentality. I was very financially successful and had my ex-wife and I had sold our share of our company to our partners 11 years ago now, as we're recording this. So we were comfortable, and I went back to my first profession that I got educated in and made a feature film. Spent 4 years doing that. And sort of by no coincidence, as it became clear my feature film was not going to get distribution, my marriage of 18 years at that point was also sort of at the end of the line. We had really done this major adventure of building a family and building this company that scaled beyond anything we could have hoped for. And both of us, I guess, were faced with this now what kind of question. And as those answers became clear to me and to my wife, those answers were very different. And we had kind of, so I came to this moment of 45 years old. I had never been physically active. I was on the sort of the just over the edge of obese, I guess, for most of my whole life, sort of, American style overweight. And I was just in so much elongated emotional pain, what I call long form pain now, that it finally, I knew something had to give. And I met, while I was filming my feature film in Russia, I met these retired Russian Special Forces men who were training in this nervous system based, very serious military martial art discipline called Sistema. And it was, and it has a kind of body work associated with it that they do with tools, and they very quickly force tension out of your body. It is very not pleasant when most people start.
Yeah.
But it really turned me around. I had always felt I had a very low tolerance for pain, but I was in so much emotional pain. I finally went back to those guys and said, something has to give. I'll train with you guys, even though I'm afraid of it. I'll train. And I started doing yoga, sort of to prep myself to even be able to train, because I felt so out of shape. And the very first lesson I did with Sistema, I told the guy, this was really the what would you say, the aha moment that got me very curious about what might be possible with my body. Like I say, I always saw myself as totally non-athletic, totally weak. And I said to the instructor in the first class, I said, we're really going to have to focus on strengthening my core, because my stomach is so weak, I can't even do a single sit-up. And he looked at me and he said, that's impossible. There's no way you can't do one sit-up. It doesn't really actually require very much work to do a sit-up. And I said, no, it's true. And he said, get down. And I was trying and struggling and sweating and embarrassed and just could not do a single sit-up. So he had me stand again, and he felt my stomach. And he said, okay, can we try a little experiment? Is it all right with you? I said, fine. He said, I'm going to give you a kind of strike to the stomach, but it's a gentle strike. It'll feel deep, but it's not fast and it's not sharp, but it will cause your stomach muscles to let go. I said, fine. He weird, almost like I had to go to the bathroom or something. He hit me, my stomach let go, and he said, do a sit-up now. And I whipped out 15 sit-ups effortlessly.
Wow.
And this was going through the looking glass for me. And he said, a lot of people who are overweight, they're spending their entire life sucking their stomach in. He said, your stomach is incredibly strong, but it's already clenched. That's why your entire stomach is like a rock. That's why you can't do a sit-up. There's no muscle cells left unclenched to do the work. That's why it feels to you like you have no power left. He said, what we have to do is not strengthen your stomach. We have to get it to let go. And once it lets go, you are so much stronger than you think. Your whole body is like one piece of wood, Dan. We have to coax this permanent contraction of all these muscles in your body. That's why you feel stiff. That's why you feel weak. So, but you're actually hugely strong because all your muscles are sitting there clenched for years and years and years. That's why you have back pain, because you have crystallized lactic acid in your muscles. He said, you're overweight, so you don't see this, but you have a rocking six-pack under there, actually. And we have to get your brain out of thinking that you're weak, and we're going to demonstrate to your nervous system that you're actually already incredibly strong. And this was the beginning of what turned it around for me, this understanding that by middle age, most of us have a huge percentage of our individual muscle cells in a state of permanent contraction. And when you have muscles permanently contracted on either side of a limb, either side of your spine, and both sides have contracted muscles, that's what makes stiffness. That's what makes supplimations in your back. Your spine doesn't just happen to get supplimations that cause you to go to the chiropractor. Unless you've been in an accident, those supplimations are occurring because you have permanently clenched muscles on both sides of your spine, behind it and in front of it. And you can go to the chiropractor all you want, but if you don't do what we're talking about here in yoga and qigong, if you're not practicing to feel more, because as you feel more, your nervous system itself realizes, wow, I don't need to have these muscles clenched. It has habituated this clenching, sometimes through trauma, sometimes through inefficiency, but all these things, I highly recommend the book Hannah Somatics, by Dr. Thomas Hanna, who tragically died many years ago, but just after he had trained his first bunch of practitioners, the very first batch that went through his training program to become practitioners. He died in a car accident, but his book, Hannah Somatics, is probably the easiest to understand explanation of what is going on in your nervous system that causes stiffness, high blood pressure, joint inflammation, and all kinds of aches and pains and inefficiencies. I highly recommend this. And he talks about his phrase that he came up with is called sensory motor amnesia, that for a lot of reasons you can read about in his book, the nervous system forgets that it has left the switch on these muscle cells, and these muscle cells are being commanded over 120 times a second to fire, 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 fire. And what we really need to do, most of us by middle age, instead of strengthening the core, what we have to do is relax the core and recapture the use of so much muscle that is not available to us to use because it's already clenched.
This is so wild to me. What an incredible story, first of all, but there is I was actually just like scanning through my body, like, is your stomach clenched? Because it's so funny because we do hold those muscles, or I even notice like with clients and in-person clients, I'll see their shoulders kind of up towards their ears. And so we'll even just address that before we do, because I know it makes them more open. So what do you do with this information? You go, you get punched in the stomach, more or less. Like, what do you do from there on? How do you begin to take that knowledge and then apply it to your life when you're in such an emotional pain state? Like, what's the next step for you? What was that?
Well, for me, it wound up becoming what would you say, a journey where I personally determined that I was going to stick long term with Systema, and there are other martial arts like Tai Chi and some others which really focus on increasing the function of the nervous system. And I decided to do that and continue with gentler arts. And what I with yoga, which I would consider an intermediate level activity, because you can certainly break a sweat doing yoga.
For sure.
I eventually, because of my experience with the Russians, because it was so transformative and yet so painful and so intense, and from like everybody, when something transforms you, you want to go home and share it with your neighbors, and when the Russians like got me out of my invisible cage of tension, I was flying home and like, wow, who would do what I just did? And I instantly knew the answer was no one, because no one I knew would do this, because I knew these guys for 3 years already, and I wasn't willing to do it either, until my life was such a mess that I felt like, wow, I have to do something. So this really sort of took me aback, and I was just like, wow, how can something be so beneficial and yet so inaccessible, both in the imagery of, Russian culture is a tough sell to anybody but Russians. We're not surrounded with a world full of Russian restaurants and Russian fashion, and you know what I'm saying.
Right.
And then it's so military in its imagery, and it's so tough in the thing. Like, how would normal people want to get involved in that? I knew the answer was they won't in its current form. And I wondered, is the pain necessary for this transformation? Sure, I feel great, and I feel great very, very quickly in a short amount of time, but I paid the price for it. I paid a big price over a short amount of time to excise this really ingrained, decades-old permanent clenching in my body and in my mind, in my psyche. So I went searching. I said, I wonder if there's an opposite side of the coin to this intense version of nervous system training. And that led me to discover the Feldenkrais method, which is a method invented by Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais in the 60s and 70s. He died in 83. And the more I started reading some of Dr. Feldenkrais' books, his most famous one is Awareness Through Movement. That's the name of his movement-based training modality also. And like Systema, Feldenkrais method has a movement-based training and touch-based training. But it is the opposite side of the coin in that everything is extremely gentle, and you really are taken back in the experience of Feldenkrais training to truly learning the way an infant does, learning the subtleties, the building blocks of movement by being very quiet. Everything's usually done laying on your back. Not everything, but a lot of it's laying on your back. You continue to go back to the position of laying on your back to feel the changes happening in your soft tissues in between doing the exercises. And they're done with no discomfort and no strain and no effort. Everything's done subtly and at the lowest degree of effort possible. And this tunes your nervous system into the subtleties of movement and really very quickly advances the conclusions that your nervous system draws, and your nervous system starts improving your ability to move and really letting go of what they call, they're scientists in Feldenkrais method, so they call it excess tonus. What I call it is chronic tension. I think that's a phrase that most of us normal people can understand what that means, because we're feeling it all the time. The chronic, the muscles that don't turn off. That's what it is. So as I joined the 4-year professional practitioner training program. And when I did that, my skill level in Systema and Feldenkrais, by training in both of those simultaneously, the advances I made were shocking to me. I had already been involved with Systema for 2 years at that point, and my level just started going up and up and up by switching between the martial side of training and the gentle side of training. I don't want to go on and on, but I want to draw a conclusion as to why I think this is important to consider training in the gentle arts and in the martial arts for nervous system training. I don't mean boxing. I don't mean hard forms, but martial arts that include some slow motion training, because slow motion is the key to training your nervous system. So I've come to believe that if you only train in the martial arts over a long period of time, what can happen is that you come to view all of existence as I'm either not fighting or I'm fighting. But everything is somehow in this context of fighting. And if you only train in the gentle arts, I've met so many people in that world who tell me of how that they're healing. But they're not healing for a month. They're not healing for a year. They're healing for 20 years.
Right.
And from the martial artist point of view, you say, wow. And in fact, I said this to somebody a month ago. I said, she had something happen to her 3 years ago, and her life's still completely affected by it. But she said, but I believe my healing process is coming along nicely. And I said to her, with all due respect, if you had cut your arm 3 years ago and we were talking and your arm was bleeding still, would you tell me that your healing process is coming along nicely? The problem with the gentle arts is you can wander into a mindset where healing is not an event, but it is a permanent lifestyle. And my feeling is if you're healing for 20 years, you're not healing. What you've actually done is you've built a shrine to your pain. And so I think the gentle arts give you a sense of self that is spiritual and internal, and martial arts training gives you a sense of self as what I call a wiggling, squiggling creature on this planet. This who do you think you are, my friend, kind of sense of self that the gentle arts don't. And so I think the nervous system wants surety, it wants variety in order to learn. And I think stepping into these two worlds of the feminine energy gentle arts and the masculine energy martial arts for all of us, for men and women, taking turns in those two worlds for the purpose of feeling more. For me, it speeds up the process of what I call somatic transformation, when you're going from a life where you're mostly executing habits of movement to a life where you're more and more and more monitoring and choosing and feeling yourself move, and where you get hooked on this feeling of, wow, I want to feel more. I want to feel more. I want to feel 10 times more than I do now, 10 years from now. This is what I would recommend to people is don't settle on the first discipline that comes along the way you would on a sport. This is not sport. This is music. This is food. This is all for you. And feeling these different flavors speeds up your process of tuning up your nervous system. And there's a discipline out there for you that can meet you right where you are, whether you're a 96-year-old grandma who hasn't gone for a walk in 10 years, or you're a working mother with 4 kids who you're homeschooling and your back is on fire all the time, or you're a collegiate athlete, or you're any variety of person. There is a way to move in slow motion. Pay attention to what it feels like, whether you have a discipline, whether you're just playing with it in your kitchen on yourself and you've never taken a single class. We have a natural capacity, everybody, to move in slow motion for the purpose of feeling it. It is a natural endowment. It is the way our nervous system recalibrates itself, and it's available to all of us, no matter what discipline you choose or no discipline. And if you get in the habit of deciding, I'm curious about the possibility of feeling magnitudes more than I do now sometime in the future, it will improve your health. It'll reduce your blood pressure. And we're not even going to get into this today, but it will certainly improve your love life as well. To feel 10 times more is a good thing in every single imaginable way.
I love that you mentioned kind of the feminine and masculine roles that you can engage in when it comes to somatic arts and healing, because I working with clients one-on-one, I have making progress, but still more or less in the same chaos or, lower vibration that they were in 20 years ago. The idea of doing different approaches and gentler approaches, not always getting you that healing that you're looking for or that feeling that you're looking for. So I really love the idea of, yes, we can have this gentler modality, but we also sometimes have to step in and make a more masculine modality. We have to engage in something, martial arts that is calling to you. I've actually been really interested and fascinated by Tai Chi. Is that something that you would consider it in your world?
In a heartbeat. If you have any ability online or locally to take some Tai Chi classes and find an instructor that you connect with and a little community of people you enjoy getting together with, Tai Chi, absolutely amazing, rich, and discipline that has both the slow movement part of it, that we see the famous scenes of people out in public squares in China every morning, millions and millions, tens of millions of people doing this every morning. Tai Chi also has an actual combat side. So the nice thing, and not all schools offer both sides. And of course, you can use the principles of the slow motion movement are the foundation of the martial arts, but some schools actually will have more like a martial arts class offered in Tai Chi than just the movement you see people doing in the park on their own. So Tai Chi is awesome because it does actually offer both sides of the spectrum.
I love that. Okay, so for the people listening, let's say they have persistent tension in their. I have a lot of people who have persistent tension in their shoulders or like their neck. That would sound like to me what you're explaining as like a red flag of this would be a great modality for somebody who's holding tension in their body. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely. There's switching back and forth, you can think of in a few ways, not just in the gentle arts to the martial arts, but you can switch back and forth also now. We have disciplines that exist now called somatic experiencing, which is sort of where psychology meets somatics, where you are asked to evoke things. You don't even have to speak them out loud all the time in somatic experiencing. You can just imagine things that trigger anxiety. Anxiety always produces muscular tension. You cannot experience anxiety without producing muscular tension. They're one and the same. And actually, what they know in somatic experiencing is what you think of. Let's think of a negative emotion. How about jealousy? Where is my significant other? I think they might be with somebody else. This we would describe as an emotion, but actually there is a pattern of muscles contracting inside you when you feel this emotion. And that, when they say, I feel jealous, there's an aspect to that is physical. There's a physical pattern of contraction happening on the right side of your neck, in your left foot, in your thigh, in your stomach, like body wide. There's a sort of clenching that happens when you have that emotion of jealousy. And that becomes what, quote unquote, feels like jealousy. So somatic experiencing is a discipline based on, say, we're going to trigger something that makes you feel jealous. We'll stick with the example. Then they draw your attention while you're feeling jealous to, what does your neck feel like? What does your shoulder feel like? Is it hunched up? Is it hunched down? And they keep going back and forth between, remember what's making you feel jealous. Okay, and now put your attention back to the physical feeling. And then they start to have you still feel jealous while you start releasing certain muscles on purpose. And a strange thing happens in your nervous system when you're feeling this emotion, but the physical print of it in your body starts to change. Everything starts to change, including the power of that emotion that's holding over your psyche, and everything starts to release, both emotionally and physically, as it disassociates the emotion from the pattern it's felt for so many years. So there's this. There's Dr. John Sarnow's book I would recommend. So what I'm saying is you can skip back between gentle and vigorous training, but you can also skip back and forth. If you have physical pain, you can do some emotional work that's based on physical feeling that will relieve that pain. If you have emotional problems like I did with when I was having my midlife crisis, I reached out to the physical side of training, and that helped me with my emotions. So this is the wonder of nervous system training, is that there's so many what we call sectors of it that we can move around between them. And so I say, if you're in physical pain from tension, why don't you try working on some psychological disciplines for a while? See what that does for you. If you have emotional problems, try working in the physical world on your nervous system and see if that can break something loose. It's a puzzle. We're trying to solve a puzzle of why are these traumatic memories still in me. They're still in my flesh. They're still in my thinking. They're still in the patterns of contraction that won't let go. Coming to terms with the past and allowing your nervous system to excise the remnants of trauma is a major component of ridding yourself of physical tension and emotional tension.
I'm loving this conversation. This is so fascinating. I do a lot of work with energy, and we do a similar ideas of going into different parts of the body and seeing what that part has to tell you, and I know they do that a lot with, just basis of psychology as well. They call it parts work. So I love that you're taking both that mental, energetic work and you're also putting it into physical form. I think this is going to be tremendously helpful for everybody listening. I know you have a new book that you have out called Somatic Fanatic. Can you talk just a little bit about that and where people can find it?
Yeah, Somatic Fanatic can be found on Amazon. At this recording, we're a few weeks out from the audio version being available on Audible, which I read. It is the story of the last 10 years of my life and how training my nervous system helped me overcome my midlife crisis and give me a new mission. And my mission has been to develop this company that has this platform and to try to forge a community of disciplines where all are equal and all are different flavors of the same ice cream, and to bring this simple message to the world that moving in slow motion while feeling it is the road out of many, many, many physical and emotional problems. It is not a magic pill, but it is a way of gaining control over your life, gaining more function without chemicals, without surgery. And it is our natural birthright to every creature that has a nervous system can improve the function of its nervous system. Squirrels can do it. Chipmunks can do it. Any animal with a nervous system can move in slow motion and learn to get more and more control over their physical body. And as they do that, your emotions become matched to the state of tension in your body. And the less physical tension you have in your body, the less emotional tension you're going to have in your psyche. We in the modern world come to think of our psyche and our body as two different things. But our view of this is because we live in this mechanical age where things are built from parts, and we see this, but we are not built from parts. We're built from a seed. We may examine medicine and psychology, different people examine it because it's so vast. We have artificially separated these things, but in reality, our parts are never separate. They're growing together. They're all one thing from the second we're created through the time that we're not here anymore. So the book is about my journey, the story I've just described to you in detail, and me visiting and learning from about 7 or 8 grand masters in different disciplines all over the world, from Europe, all through the United States, in Asia, and other places. And my somatic journey from feeling weak and hopeless and that the best part of my life was over to now 10 years later, where every aspect of my life, I feel like I have the capacity of a 56-year-old person with the curiosity and vibrance and jumping out of bed in the morning of a 7-year-old. And this is all through meeting so many people who are involved in this, helping people to unlock themselves from this invisible cage of tension most middle-aged people are carrying around without even realizing it. And seeing how rich and vast this world is just has me feeling like a kid on Christmas morning every single day when I get up. And that's what the book is about, that transformation from hopelessness to the way I feel now.
I think we're all looking for that, right? Is the vibrancy of a 7-year-old. And it is wild how we carry around this extra energy, this trauma in our bodies. And I know that even in the research I've done with just energy and the way it stores in your body, is that can cause even weight gain and that kind of stuff. So I feel like anybody would be absolutely lucky to work with you. How can they connect with you or work with you or learn more about your programs?
The road to everything is through Somatic Fanatic, the video podcast. And that is on YouTube, and we are just getting rolling with that. We produce long form content there. We have hour to hour and a half episodes. Every episode includes an interview, about 25 to 30-minute interview with a top level instructor, and that instructor to appear on the podcast has to provide a free 30 to 60-minute lesson that's available in the link in the description. So you can not only meet people, but every single person that appears on the podcast, you can do a class with them absolutely free. We produce 3 episodes in a row on a single subject. Our first one was lower back pain. The ones that are about to come off the production line now are for neck pain. And we go around to all different kinds of things, and we produce about 4 to 4.5 hours worth of content about that subject. And we're meeting the neighbors, and I'm giving you training tips, and we're interviewing. I'm also reacting to videos on YouTube of people talking about this subject, and I'll, just like a music reaction video, I'll stop it and talk and give my 2 cents. Sometimes I do it with guests where we're both watching the video. And then ultimately we end with a long form interview with a top instructor, and then you have a free class. That sends you to a lot more free training material. And ultimately, if you're feeling the benefit and it makes sense to you, that eventually brings you to an offer to subscribe to somaticlab.live, which is like a department store of training of all kinds of disciplines. And then we have tools that help us match make you with whoever you are, wherever you're starting at this moment. Here's some disciplines you might want to try. Here's some instructors whose live and on-demand classes are available. Check this out, check that out. And we try to handhold you and help you find a discipline of nervous system training that's exactly right for you right at this moment.
Awesome. So it sounds like, make sure you guys grab Somatic Fanatic. I will make sure to put all the links right in the bio of this podcast. But it sounds like if this information has resonated for you, we are going to make it quick and easy. And Dan has made it quick and easy for you to be able to start your journey right with him. So I will put all of these links in the podcast bio so you guys can connect with him, because my mind is blown, Dan. This has been a fun interview. I've enjoyed learning about this. I've known bits and pieces from my own studying, but to have it put in the ways you've just put it in making the suggestions that you've made makes so much sense to me, and I know it will for my listeners as well. So I'm so grateful to have had you on. Is there any parting wisdom that you have for the audience today?
I just want to first thank you, Nichole, for having me on, and it's exciting for me to be part of your podcast and to get a chance to introduce my way of thinking about these issues to your community. I would say the parting words of wisdom is to eliminate any objection you might have to getting started right now. You can lift a teaspoon into a cup of tea in a way where you're doing it slowly and for the purpose of feeling it. There is no reason to not start your somatic exploration immediately, because you don't need gear, you don't need to break a sweat, you don't need to do anything that's slightly uncomfortable. All you need to do is move slowly and tune in to what does it feel like. If I raise my hand in the air, what does it feel like in the muscle that's doing the most work? What does it feel like in the muscles that are doing the least work? The last thing I would suggest to your listeners that might make it playful and fun, is just that this is an exploration. I'm going to skip what I was going to say, because more importantly, don't count reps. Start doing it. Do not count reps. We have two ways of learning: logic and feeling. We want to get away from logic. When you're training for strength, count reps. When you're training your nervous system, slow it way down and don't count reps. Just focus on what it feels like. And before you know it, you're going to feel that aches and pains that, I might have a sore knee and I'm doing slow motion movement in my shoulders every day. And next thing I know, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. Everything is connected, and we don't know the inefficiencies that have developed in ourselves. We cannot, there's so many hundreds of millions of connections and ways of moving. We cannot, with our logical mind, figure it all out. So just start, just move in very, very slow motion. When I say slow, the last tip I'll give you is that most people think of as slow, do it 25% that speed. And that is slow. Very, very slow. And enjoy and do it as a child. And it's just to see what might happen. Lead with curiosity. When training for strength, you lead with discipline. When training your nervous system, you must lead with curiosity at what might be possible. And if it happens, great. And if it doesn't, great also. It doesn't matter, because it's all an exploration.
I love that. That's so helpful. And I think it's so manageable and doable. And we're a big component of curiosity and play on this podcast. So I appreciate you bringing your wisdom. And we will end here.
Thanks, Nichole. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Rock Your Soul book and podcast. Take a moment to book a one-on-one session with me or purchase my trainings at NicholeEaton.com. Join the Rock Your Soul Facebook group or follow me on Instagram at NicholeEaton.xo. And if you loved this podcast, don't forget to share it. Thank you.